Arsenal take on a resurgent Manchester City at Emirates Stadium on Sunday. In this episode, we'll discuss why you can't afford to sleep on Pep Guardiola's side and provide you with a comprehensive preview of this weekend's blockbuster fixture. I suppose we can touch on some transfer stuff too. All of that and more to come on this episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. But first, a message from our partner. This video is brought to you by Stocks FC. Stocks FC is the football stock market where you can buy stocks in your favorite players and earn cash rewards based on their real life performances. To get you started, they're giving away 5 free stocks to every user that signs up this month, offering you the chance to familiarize yourself with the platform. Buy stocks in young players you fancy to prove themselves and watch their stocks rise, or invest in those you see as solid performers who will maintain their value. Earn weekly dividend payments every time your players score goals, make assists and play key passes. Your free loan stocks are eligible for payouts for a month, so why not give it a go? To claim your 5 free loan stocks and begin your journey, scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description. I'll be taking you along on my journey throughout our upcoming videos. Join me on the ride, Stocks FC. Hey everybody, how are we? Welcome back to another episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, Harry Symeou. On today's episode, we're going to be focusing on that massive game against Manchester City coming up on Sunday afternoon. It's interesting, isn't it? Because it feels like with all the focus and hope of Arsenal fans at the minute pinned on the idea of Arsenal going out and bringing in that attacker that we all, I think, agree we could really do with. The significance of this game has maybe gone under the radar a little bit. You know, had this been a fixture outside of the transfer window, I think there'd be a lot more focus on it. I think there'd be a lot more conversations about it. And I think that maybe people would be feeling a little bit more nervous as a consequence of it having that extra bit of focus. I think right now, with the window closing on Monday, everybody's kind of desperate for that little bit of information, that little bit of hope that actually Arsenal are going to go out and get the player that we all believe they need. And maybe that's taken away from some of the build up to this game. I certainly feel it has, just sort of judging by the tone of the conversations and the tone of the conversations that are happening at the moment around this one. Look, I've got a few very simple things to say as we go into this game. And I think the first one is don't sleep on them. Like, this is a resurgent Manchester City. They scraped through in the Champions League, yes, and, you know, they've not had a great league campaign. They're 6 points behind us going into this weekend's game. But they do sit second in the Premier League form table, which shows you that Manchester City have got themselves back on the right track, that Manchester City are in a position from which they can build and from which they can push forward. Now, I'm not saying that they're going to work their way back into the title race. I think it's too early to say that. But you wouldn't put it past them, would you, when you look at the quality that they have within their ranks, when you look at the depth that they have. And I know that people have talked about the injuries that they've suffered with this season, and that's absolutely right. But they were able in this window to go out and do 3 quite significant bits of business. Most notably, they've brought in Omar Marmoush, who I know a lot of Arsenal fans, I know a lot of our listeners and viewers would have quite liked to see Arsenal make a move for, a player that I think is going to slot in really nicely just in behind Erling Haaland, and a player that can cause us some real problems. Have they looked soft-centered at times this season? Yes. There's no doubt about that. And they certainly look vulnerable on the transition. But I think in order for us to exploit that, we've got to slightly adapt and change our game. I think what you saw from Arsenal last season at Emirates Stadium when we beat them by 1-0, Gabriel Martinelli's deflected shot, you'll remember, was the difference between the two sides. But what we were really good at doing was just kind of saying, no problem. You have the ball in your defensive third. You have the ball in that area that you like to start moves from. We'll sit off you. We won't fully press you. We'll kind of half press you, and we'll set up with a mid block, and we'll look to hit you on the break, and we'll look to go over the top at points and at certain times in the game as well. And I think back to that game, and I thought that was the point where I felt Arsenal had really grown up. Because, yes, we know that Mikel Arteta likes control. We know that it's all about dominance. We know that there are some core principles to the way that he likes his team to play. And in 99 games out of 100, you are going to see those principles in play, right? But there are certain games where you have to adapt, where you have to adjust. And Manchester City are good enough to warrant that adaptation and that adjustment. So I think that if you're Arsenal, you look at the game, and I think you play it in a very similar way to the home fixture last season. Now, if we look at a more recent encounter, obviously there was that game up at the Etihad earlier on in the season. Arsenal go a goal down, but Arsenal turn the game on its head, 2-1 up, going in at the break, and Leandro Trossard gets sent off for kicking the ball away 0.07 of a second, something like that, after the whistle went. Ridiculous decision. We've been over that a million times. I don't want to drag that up again because it'll just make me angry and it'll spoil the tone and the mood of the podcast. But we were seconds away, even with 10 men, from holding on. I know at the time it felt really heartbreaking. It felt like a gut punch, the fact that we conceded that goal so late on. But as time went on, I started to take great encouragement from that. If you can go away to Manchester City, who, have been this machine over the last few seasons, and you can defend like that with 10 men, you can defend anywhere. You can defend anywhere. And a little bit of luck is all we needed. And if we got that rub of the green, if the ball didn't deflect the way it did, and listen, you could never really control these things, but just a little bit more fortune, and we would have come away from there with all 3 points, and everybody would have been talking about Arsenal's resolve, Arsenal's fighting spirit, Arsenal's ability to dig in when they really needed to and make sure, that they got over the line. Unfortunately, that wasn't the conversation afterwards, at least not in the immediate aftermath. I think there was a real feeling of disappointment. And over time, as I say, we started to realize, actually, that was a pretty valiant effort, and everybody should be incredibly proud. In that game, it's difficult to say what the game plan looked like or would have looked like, because we were 2-1 up at half time. We were in control. We were in the ascendancy. We had started the game really poorly, I thought, but we recovered excellently with Calafiori's amazing goal. And then, of course, Gabriel put us 2-1 up from a set piece. And we were in control. We were in a great place. We were in the ascendancy, as I say. And it's difficult to know how that game would have developed had we stayed 11 versus 11. But what I will say is we are capable of going toe-to-toe with Manchester City now. That's a step forward for us. And I think we've seen that over the last couple of seasons. There's a stat that I'm going to share with you guys a little bit later on that backs that point up as well. And yes, look, Manchester City right now, they're not the same Manchester City that we were chasing down the last couple of years. Have they dropped off in level? Yes, they have. But do not sleep on them. Do not sleep on them, because this is still a remarkably talented side full of top draw players who can hurt you at any given moment. I think for us, we play with a sort of mid-block. We half press. We press at the right points, but always need to be aware of the spaces and gaps that we're leaving, because they are good enough to pick you off if you overcommit. And it's all about risk versus reward, right? There's lots of times where I've seen Arsenal this season overcommit bodies forward in an attempt to break down a low block, knowing that their centre-halves 1v1 could probably deal with 9 out of 10 duels, could probably handle, even being in an isolated situation, the threat of the opposition. When you're playing Manchester City, you can't do that. There's 2 teams in this league that you have to be not fearful of, because I think that's the wrong word, but respectful of, to the point where I believe it's okay to change your core principle, to adapt your sort of basis of a game plan and to change it. And I think Manchester City and Liverpool are those 2 teams. And people will say that this is a must-win game and that Arsenal have to go out there and beat Manchester City. What I can say is, if we beat Manchester City, it'll be one hell of a boost. One hell of a boost at a time where I think it's fair to say that even Arsenal fans are asking questions as to whether we're good enough to hunt down this Liverpool side. A victory over Manchester City, no matter what their season's been like so far. And as I say, they've turned the corner anyway. They're second in the Premier League form table. A victory against Manchester City is a confidence boost. It is a mood lifter. It is so many things. But do I think that this game is point blank a must win? Actually, I don't. And you're going to think I'm crazy for saying that. But my reason for that is quite simple. I just think that whenever us or Liverpool, the 2 teams that I believe currently to be in the title race. Whenever one of us is playing Manchester City, what you need that weekend is not necessarily to make up ground, but not to lose ground. And so I believe that Arsenal have to, at the absolute minimum this weekend, match the result that Liverpool get at Bournemouth. Now, Liverpool are kicking off against Bournemouth in around about half an hour's time. I'm recording this at 2:30 on Saturday afternoon. If Bournemouth can hold Liverpool to a draw, then a draw is okay for Arsenal against Manchester City, because we'd have got City out of the way, both fixtures done without losing any further ground. If they were to drop points, Liverpool, and we then went and won the game, oh, that would be massive, huge. But the first point of our objective has to be, in my opinion, match Liverpool's result. Don't put too much pressure on yourselves. Don't go into the game thinking you have to go out and blow them away and win it. Don't put that pressure on yourselves. Let's match Liverpool's result. And if we can get something more than what Liverpool get, and we make up some ground and we claw back those couple of points that we gave them back a few weeks ago on the weekend that we played Manchester City, that would be huge. So come on, you cherries. Hopefully Bournemouth can do us a little bit of a favor today. Has this fixture developed a little bit of needle? Absolutely it has, and I love it. There's a mutual respect between the two managers given their history, but there's certainly no love lost between the two sets of players. We heard Erling Haaland, didn't we, at the end of that last fixture earlier in the season, say stay humble or whatever nonsense he was blabbing on about after Manchester City proceeded to have a stinker of a few months. The irony of it was incredible. But even though I think he was wrong to say that, and I think actually that comment blew up in his face a little bit, he's still an incredibly dangerous player, and we've got to be wary of him. We've got to be wary of Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, Omar Marmoush, Phil Foden. They've got so many good players, regardless of what people say about their level right now. And I know there's been a lot of talk about Pep Guardiola this season, and some suggestions that what's going on in the background has impacted their performances on the pitch. I don't know. I just think the team come to an end of a cycle, but teams at the end of the cycle that still have a ton of quality players are very dangerous still, and you should never write them off. But when I talk about the way we should approach the game, I'm not saying that we go there and we're at home. I'm not saying that we go and we sit back, but I'm saying that we're a little bit more smart and a little bit more savvy in the way that we approach the game, that we're a little bit more savvy in terms of being patient, and that if we have to let Manchester City have the ball in certain areas, because they will have a lot of the ball, Manchester City, they just do. That's the type of team that they are. Then you have to be comfortable in your own skin when you're not on the ball. And that's going to be a bit of a mindset change for Arsenal, because one of the things we've seen this season, even if we could make the argument or case that maybe we've regressed in certain areas, one of the things that continues to be a key pillar of the way we play is how much possession we have. And to go into a game where you're probably not going to have as much possession, I'm not saying we'll have less or significantly less, but it's probably going to be closer to 50-50 than it is against most other teams. So, I think we got to be comfortable in our own skin and comfortable defending off the ball as well. And that's really important. If we can set up with that kind of mid-block, with that counter-attacking threats, well, I think it's imperative that Gabriel Martinelli plays at the weekend. If we can do all of those things, we've got a great chance of sort of capitalizing on the vulnerabilities that this Manchester City side clearly have. Okay, let's talk about Mikel Arteta's press conference. He faced the media yesterday afternoon. That's Friday afternoon ahead of this big game. Let's have a look at some of the highlights of what he had to say. Regarding the transfer window, he says he's very confident in the work that the club is doing. And of course, there's still hope, by the looks of it, that Arsenal are going to get somebody in through the door. We'll touch on some transfer stuff a little bit later on in the podcast. He did talk about the rivalry. He was asked about the rivalry between the two clubs. Mikel Arteta sort of batted those questions away by saying, look, the rivalry is normal. It's two teams that want to win. Says his relationship with Pep Guardiola is unaffected by what went on earlier in the season. Pep said similar in his press conference as well. And Mikel Arteta taking the opportunity once again to urge the crowd, urge the supporters to get behind the team and give it their absolute all. He said, bring the noise and the energy. That's what we want. And if we do that, then I think we stand a better chance of winning the game. I really do think the atmosphere plays a massive part. And that's why at times I've been quite disappointed in it in recent months. Let's move on to some team news. Arsenal may have to make a late decision on the fitness of goalkeeper David Raya. Mikel Arteta, in that aforementioned press conference, made the point that it was a muscular problem. So that puts his participation in doubt. He did miss Wednesday's win at Girona because of that problem. And it's fair to say, like, I don't want to write the guy off, but it's fair to say that not everybody was convinced by the performance of Neto that night. So if David Raya is unavailable, that is a massive blow. There's no doubt about it. Miles Lewis-Skelly is available. His red card against Wolves was overturned. Of course, we've been talking a fair bit about that recently. But Ben White, Takahiro Tomiyasu, Bukayo Saka, and Gabriel Jesus are all still sidelined. On Ben White, the question was asked of Mikel Arteta as to whether or not he will be available, and he said that he hasn't trained with us yet. So maybe he's not quite as close to a first-team return as some have suggested in recent weeks. Manchester City boss Pep Guardiola has reported no new injury concerns. Omar Marmoush, Abdulkadir Kusunov, and Victor Reis come back into contention. All of those players were ineligible against Club Brugge in midweek, and the fit again Oscar Bob will probably return to the squad. They are, however, without Ruben Diaz, Nathan Ake, Jeremy Doku, and Rodri. Let's talk about the head-to-head between these two sides. Now, when I say that Arsenal have made strides forward in recent years, and one of the ways that you can evidence that is by looking at their more recent record against Manchester City. This is exactly what I want to. This is exactly what I mean, is what I should say. Manchester City won 12 consecutive Premier League games against Arsenal between 2017 and 2023. 12 consecutive Premier League games. But they are winless in the subsequent 3 meetings. There's been 2 draws and 1 Arsenal win. The Gunners are vying for back-to-back home league victories against City for the first time since a run of 4 between October 2005 and April 2009. So you got to go a long way back to find Arsenal's last back-to-back victories in the Premier League against Manchester City. Look, as I keep saying it, I use it as a benchmark because for me, Manchester City have been clear and above, clear and away, the best team in Europe for some time. And I know they haven't always won the Champions League, but if you win the best league in Europe, I think that presents a pretty strong case to say that you're the best team in Europe. Champions League's a cup competition. Doesn't always work out that way. And for whatever reason, Manchester City just keep drawing Real Madrid. They've drawn them again in this season's UEFA Champions League. But I think, you know, we went from like not really ever believing that we could beat City to becoming super competitive with them in terms of position in the table over the last couple of years and points differences, etc., but also on the pitch as well in those games. But those games, as I said at the top, have got that little bit of needle now. There is a little bit more of a bite in that fixture. Manchester City, who were kings of the castle, sitting on their perch, threatened to be knocked off of it by Arsenal in the last couple of seasons. Now they were able to hold their ground and they were able to make sure that Arsenal could not surpass them and could not usurp them, etc., etc. But they feel like Arsenal are coming for them a little bit. And I think, you know, if you look at where they are this season, obviously they've had a drop off and you know, it's not that we've massively improved, it's that they've had a drop off, and that's why they're 6 points off of our pace, which isn't even the title winning pace at the minute. Liverpool are setting that. But you just look at it and you think, you know, there is that little bit of needle that's developed because of some of the events that have happened in game, but also I think the off the field stuff has contributed here as well. I think Manchester City have been the subject of a lot of questions with regards to PSR and the financial charges and all the rest of it. And that is obviously ongoing. Like, we don't know what the outcome of that is going to be yet. But Arsenal are one of the, if you like, traditional establishment clubs. And there seems to have become quite a rivalry recently between the likes of Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester United, and then your Manchester Cities, your Newcastles, your Chelseas. the new money clubs, if you like. Now, I know City had that investment a fair while back now, but it's still new money in comparison to Arsenal and Man United and Liverpool, etc., etc. And I think the off the pitch stuff, it does carry onto the pitch as well. And I do think that that has contributed to the needle. Mikel Arteta is super passionate. Does he sometimes cross the line on the touchline? Yeah, he does. Pep Guardiola is the same. There's players on both sides that are extremely passionate, and it does boil over. But you know what? That's what makes for the best games. That's what made that Arsenal-Manchester United rivalry the most special rivalry I think we've ever seen in the Premier League. And I know that people could make the case that, let's say, peak Pep City and peak Klopp Liverpool, when those two were going toe-to-toe, that the games were of a higher caliber and of a higher standard. I personally don't think that, but I think a lot of people make that case, and that's fine. But it never, ever had the needle that Arsenal Manchester United had. So for a rivalry to be interesting, not just to the two sets of fans that live and breathe it, but to the wider footballing community, it does need to have a bit of that. And I think this game has got that now. Probably didn't have it a few seasons ago, though, when City never really saw us as serious contenders. Let's talk starting 11 then. How would you like to see Arsenal line up in this one? Get involved in the chat as well. Okay, so I've picked my Arsenal 11 for the game against Manchester City on Sunday. I've had to make a couple of, I would say, difficult decisions. Let's have a look. Hold on. Let me share the screen properly. Which one do I want? There we go. Nope, that's the one. So Raya, I'm assuming, will be fit. I think even if he's 75, 80%, Arsenal push him through it. We need him in a game like this. It's massive. And we've got some time off, haven't we, after the Newcastle game before we next play again. So maybe there's an opportunity to sort of just help him through this game and the second leg up at St. James's Park before giving him a break that he probably could do with. My back four, apart from one position, is easy. Timber right back, Saliba and Gabriel are my two centre backs. At left back, I've gone with Ricardo Calafiori just. And that's because I just look at Ricardo Calafiori and I just think he gives you so much when he's fit and available, not just defensively, but offensively as well, as we've seen in recent weeks. Scored the winner at Wolves, scored the goal against Manchester City earlier in the season. And sometimes that history and that confidence that you carry into certain fixtures as a player based on previous events, I think can be really, really powerful. I think he just edges it for me over Miles Lewis Skelly, but that is not a slight whatsoever on the young man who I think's been incredible. He's been so good. I wouldn't be surprised if Mikel Arteta picked Miles Lewis Skelly, but if I'm picking the 11, I think I just about go for Ricardo Calafiori first. So back four, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, Calafiori. In midfield, I'm going with Partey at the base, and then I'm going with Rice and Odegaard. If it is Calafiori, Rice is going to have to be quite switched on defensively because Calafiori does like to wander just that little bit more. I think Arteta wants that to a certain point, but I do think Calafiori takes it over the line a little bit at times in terms of the frequency with which he wanders and sometimes how far he wanders forward. Partey, Rice, Odegaard is Arsenal's best midfield for me. It has been from the very start of the season, and that's never really changed in my mind. And then in the wide positions, I'm going Martinelli right, Trossard left, and I'm going Havertz through the middle. So that is the team that I would pick. Raya in goal, Timber, Saliba, Gabriel, and Calafiori. Partey, Odegaard, and Rice, and I'm going Martinelli, Trossard, and Havertz through the middle. Okay, that's my starting 11 then. As I said already, look, for me, I'd love us to win it, obviously, right? And if we could, it would be a massive boost. And if we could pick up all 3 points and potentially capitalize on I don't know, is there going to be a slip up from Liverpool today? We're about 20 minutes out from kickoff. I don't know, but if Liverpool win, it really puts the pressure on us to go and win. And then it becomes a must-win game. And that's why I don't want to frame it like that. I don't want to look at it like that. I want to look at it through a slightly blurred lens, if you like, and through a slightly different perspective and say, we have to match Liverpool's result. Because if you look at it like that and Liverpool do drop points at the Vitality this afternoon, then all of a sudden you look at the game with a bit of freedom. You look at the game in a way where you're looking at the game in a way where you're going into it a little bit more relaxed and you think, well, the only potentially bad outcome here would be a defeat, which nobody wants anyway. But if Liverpool were to draw at Bournemouth today and Arsenal then on 0-0 on 85 minutes and have that decision to make of, do we go hell for leather, throw everybody forward and try and win it and risk being caught out on the break, or do we just slow the pace down and settle for the draw? Having the luxury of being able to do that without doing any damage, I think would be great. So a lot of what I'm saying is riding on what happens at the Vitality Stadium. I appreciate that, but I think we just have to match Liverpool's result. If Liverpool win today, then you just got to go and win yourselves. And it's simple. There's no getting caught in two minds. So that's how I look at it. Right. Shall we wrap up our Arsenal Man City chat with a prediction? Yeah, go on then. I'm going to go Arsenal 2, Manchester City 1. I fancy us to beat them. I fancy us to score 1 from a set piece and 1 on a counter attack. I think we'll concede though as well. So I'm going to go Arsenal 2, Manchester City 1. Right, going to take a very, very brief pause. When we come back, we're going to do a little bit of transfer chat before we sign off to go and watch that game at the Vitality between Bournemouth and Liverpool. Okay, so on the transfer front, what's new? At the time of recording, not a great deal is the truth. Aidan Heaven has joined Manchester United. A little bit surprised by that, I've got to say. I have followed Aidan Heaven's career quite closely. I like him. I think he's got the makings of a really top centre-half. I don't understand why, when you're already at a big club that you know, a big club where you've come through the ranks, and as a result of that, there's already going to be some goodwill from the people within the club who obviously know you and are willing you to succeed, but also from the fans. I don't get why you would get up and go to a club like Manchester United. Like, if he was regularly in the squad, if he was regularly in and around the picture, doing everything that he could do, to sort of to break into the team, but then sort of getting as far as the bench and then not having much joy beyond that, I'd understand it. But if you're Aidan Heaven at this age, I think you've just got to focus on making yourself a mainstay in the squad. And I think you've got to look at some players at Arsenal that are clearly quite vulnerable in terms of their position within the squad. So I'll tell you who I'm thinking of when I say that. With all due respect, Jakub Kiwior. Right, I like Jakub Kiwior. I think he's a good centre half when he plays on the left side. But obviously, Gabriel is always available, touch wood, and Gabriel is so good that he's never going to take that position off of him. I suppose Ricardo Calafiori coming in, another left-sided centre back, it doesn't really help Jakub Kiwior's situation. But I would be looking at Kiwior if I was Aidan Heaven. If I was a young player coming through the ranks, and I'd be saying he's in and out of the team. When he plays, he doesn't play in his preferred position, which kind of shows you where he is in the pecking order. And he's the vulnerable one. Do you know what I mean? He's the one that's been left out of the pack. I'm going to target him. And when I say target him, I don't mean you're going to go after him on the training ground or bully him or anything like that. I don't mean that. I mean, I'm going to target his position in the squad. Because clearly he's not fancied. Well, it's on me to do what I can to work myself into the position that Jakub Kiwior currently occupies. And if I get into that position and then I don't get game time at this young age, it's not the end of the world. Then I can seek a move elsewhere. But going to Man United, it's such an unstable environment. Like, I don't understand why young players think that is going to that is going to work. You know, I don't understand why people look at Manchester United as a better destination than Arsenal in terms of development right now. Yeah. Anyway, can't see it. Anyway, wish him all the best. Nothing against the lad, obviously. I hope he does well to a point, as well as I'd like to see Manchester United do, etc., etc. But yeah, I don't get the decision, to be honest. And I've seen people reporting that Arsenal have got like big compensation. What's the compensation? £1 million? In the grand scheme of things for Arsenal Football Club, does that make a difference? I don't think it does, if I'm being honest with you. Elsewhere, Marcus Rashford is closing in on a move to Aston Villa on loan. Does that change the Watkins situation? Because we've also heard that Asensio from PSG is on the cards for Aston Villa as well. Could those two potential incomings open the door to Ollie Watkins leaving? That's the question we're all asking ourselves at the moment as Arsenal fans. But sorry to put a spanner in the works. Unai Emery did say yesterday that Ollie Watkins is going nowhere. And at this moment in time, at the time of recording at 2:45 p.m. on Saturday, the 1st of February, I have heard nothing to suggest that that's not going to be the case. It looks like he's staying put. Villa are trying to bolster the squad. They've lost John Duran, so maybe they see Rashford as a potential replacement for him. And they've also let Emi Buendia go in this window out on loan with I don't know if it's an option or an obligation to buy in the summer, but that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Rashford for Duran, Asensio for Buendia. If you do want to have a little bit of fun, you can have a look at what's going on at Spurs at the minute. They were rejected yesterday by Mathis Tel, despite Spurs tabling a very, very significant offer to Bayern Munich for his services. He decided that he doesn't want to go there. He'd rather stay at Bayern Munich than join Tottenham Hotspur. And Fikayo Tomori was said to be someone that they're looking at, given that it looks like Dragusin is out with a long-term injury. And he too has rejected a move to Tottenham Hotspur. I mean, can you blame these players? Like, Tottenham are languishing down in 15th in the league. You can't exactly be sold a project by Ange Postecoglou when the results are this volatile. You don't even know if he's going to be there in a month's time. So why would you commit your future based on what he tells you or what he says? Tottenham are in a bad situation at the minute. And whenever I think that ours is a bit rough, I look at theirs and I just think, yeah, I'd rather be us every single day of the of the week. But yeah, just to round off on an Arsenal note, I joked that I didn't joke. I kind of suggested that maybe Rashford and Asensio coming in for Villa, if those two deals are completed, would open the door for Ollie Watkins. I really do feel like it's now or never for Ollie Watkins. Like, Ollie Watkins will never be an Arsenal player if he doesn't join us this summer. I honestly believe that. I said this summer, I beg your pardon. If he doesn't join us this winter, I don't think Ollie Watkins ever becomes an Arsenal player. So if I'm him, I'm pushing for this. I am putting in a transfer request. I am causing a fuss. Villa could do with the sale for PSR reasons as well, but obviously, having lost Duran, they are wary of leaving themselves short and vulnerable. I just think there's an amount of money, and it's not a million miles off of what we already sort of seem to offer, that could tempt the club, maybe not Unai Emery, but the club into going, we have to let this go. And if Ollie Watkins is pushing it from his side as well, who knows what can happen in the last couple of days of the window. But as of now, I don't know of Arsenal progressing with any of the targets that we've heard of throughout the course of the month. And to be quite frank, it isn't looking that great. I understand that the window closes on Monday night, and I understand that there's a desperation within the fan base at the minute to see us do the business that we all believe would bolster our chances of having a successful campaign. But I do think that right now the focus has to be on Man City, and the mood in the fan base does have a direct impact, because if people turn up at the Emirates Stadium not up for the game and not ready to give 100% from the stands for the players to feed off and for the players to generate that extra 10, 15, 20% out of, then that's not good. So I think for us, we've got to park the transfer stuff, park it for the next 24 hours. And I know that's wild to say because there isn't a long time to go. I'm not saying that the club should park it. Those working on whatever it is that they're working on. Remember, Mikel Arteta said he's very confident in the work they're doing. They've got to be at it 100%. They've got to be full speed ahead, of course. But for us, as fans, we've got to somehow compartmentalize our frustrations regarding the transfer window and focus and give all our energy and bring all the noise to the game against Manchester City on Sunday, because that is of paramount importance. If we manage that, if we can get all 3 points, the mood lifts instantly. And then if we could add someone on deadline day as well, actually, that could be a real sparking point, couldn't it, for this Arsenal team moving forward. Afsar says, would signing Ollie Watkins spoil our summer budgets and main big target? Do you know what, mate? I think if we got Ollie Watkins, then the summer plan changes, because Ollie Watkins would be that big money striker. And I'm not saying that Ollie Watkins is one for the next 5, 6, 7 years, because of course he's 29 years old. And I know that's been a point of debate among a lot of Arsenal fans as to whether or not it would be a good signing. But I think if you sign Ollie Watkins, then you can postpone bringing in another striker because Ollie Watkins can be your striker along with Kai Havertz. And I know that people really want Benjamin Sesko, and I like Benjamin Sesko. I would have him in a heartbeat. But I do think there's something to be said for bringing in someone who's more of a guarantee. And Ollie Watkins, to me, given his Premier League record, is a guarantee to score you, shall we say, anywhere between 15 and 22, 23 league goals in a season. In the right team, in a good team, I think he delivers that. And I can't say hand on heart, as much as I like the play, that Benjamin Sesko is going to bring you that straight away. So yes, you're paying a little bit more relative to his age than you probably want to, but you're also getting something that is as close to a sure thing as you can possibly find in the transfer market. Whereas with someone like Benjamin Sesko, who might well be who we turn to come the summer, there is an element of risk. So I think Arsenal's summer plans would be impacted by a signing of Ollie Watkins now, if they could somehow miraculously pull that off. And it might postpone the signing of our next big striker for maybe 2 seasons, allow us to focus on building other areas, again, knowing that him and Havertz can do the job between them. And then we go again, maybe at a time when the market is richer in terms of available high quality strikers. Maybe that's it. Sally says, do you think Edu's departure has affected our transfer window? Do you think him leaving would have killed some potential deals, especially those rumored to be Brazilian? Well, I've said this before. I think Edu is someone who lights up a room when he goes into it. And I think he's very, very persuasive and very, very convincing. I think when you lose that kind of influence, it doesn't help in any negotiations that you're doing. But also, if they're his contacts and what's gone down at Arsenal regarding Edu or involving Edu has gone down. And we don't know for a fact, but we are led to believe that there was, some frustration on Edu's part, that he wanted the sort of promotion that wasn't ever forthcoming. And, he seeked other opportunities. And along comes Evangelos Marinakis and says, come and be not my sporting director, but a CEO with me, which is what Edu had aspirations of being. Maybe he's got some contacts and some players in mind that he would rather hold off on and try and take to the club where he's going to be working. I mean, at the end of the day, you say what you like about the move that Edu's chosen to make. I was very anti it at the time. I was like, what? Edu leaving the Arsenal, his club, the club that he made his name at, really, when you think about it. He's leaving that to go and join Olympiacos and Nottingham Forest, with all due respect to those football clubs. And I just thought, what has he did? But Nottingham Forest have just beaten Brighton by 7 goals to nil. 7 goals to nil. And Nottingham Forest are, if you look at the Premier League table right now, they are level on points with us. We're only above them on goal difference. Yes, we've played a game less. But Nottingham Forest are level on points with Arsenal, title contenders Arsenal. So there is a hell of a lot of ambition around that project. That is undeniable. Undeniable. Right. I am going to love you and leave you. Just a quick reminder before I go that this podcast is brought to you by the good people over at Stocks FC. You can claim your 5 free stocks by scanning the QR code in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. You can buy stocks in your favorite players and watch their values increase or decrease if you back the wrong ones. Just to emphasize, it is not a get-rich-quick scheme. So only play Stocks FC if you can afford to. I'm currently playing it. I am loving it. I'm hooked. I'm waking up every morning. I'm checking the value of my stocks and of my portfolio. I've said it to you guys before. And on the next show that we do, we'll do a comprehensive breakdown of my portfolio so you can see what I've got. You can see where I've made and you can see where I've lost. I've opted to go for a slightly less orthodox approach by trying to invest in players who I believe are at a low in terms of their price point, because maybe their form's not great, they're not contributing as much as they should, but whom I believe will get back on the right path. And therefore, I'm hoping to grow the value of my portfolio that way. Bit of a risky strategy, but hey, it's the way I've decided to go. I'm all in on it now. I'm not backing down. Stocks FC, scan the QR code bottom right-hand corner of the screen on YouTube, or click the link in the description to claim your 5 free loan stocks. You'll be eligible for dividend payments on those 5 free loan stocks for the first month to get you going and to give you an idea of of how it's all looking, and how to use the platform as well. Any questions, any thoughts on it, please do reach out. I'll be more than happy to help. Thank you all so much for joining me on this episode of the Chronicles of Aguna. Remember, we got to match whatever Liverpool do, and we cannot sleep on Manchester City. Those are my two parting messages ahead of the big game on Sunday. Thanks for listening in. Remember, match day reaction to come on the Patreon side of things, patreon.com/Chronicles of Aguna, followed by a full reflection on the game, which might come on Sunday night, just depending on what time I get home from work. If not, it'll be with you bright and early on Monday morning. Thank you all so much. I'll see you all on the next one. Until then, have a great what remains of your Saturday. Goodbye.